Shouldn't I be further along in my life?
It feels like I'm doing the same thing, day in and day out.
How do I go from where I'm at to where I want to be?
There's gotta be something more out there for me.
Is it too much of a risk?
What are people gonna think?
What if I fail?
What if I fail?
What if I fail?
It's time to stop holding back.
It's time to stop making excuses.
It's time to take a leap.
It's time to find that drive, that passion, that fire.
It's time to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
It's time to be at the top of the game. I'm done with being content.
Welcome to the Finding Fire podcast. Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode today. Ryan and Pete got to sit down with Kristina from Sugar on Top Sweet Shop and really had a great conversation revolving her journey and how she left the corporate world and started her own sweet shop.
Yeah.
One of the things that really resonated with me was one of the questions that Kristina's leadership group had asked her was, how much time out of your day are you spending on things that play to your strength? Her answer was 35%. And that really resonated with me because in my previous roles, I've felt that same way, that I wasn't really doing what I'm strong at or what I'm good at, and ultimately wasn't happy. So maybe for anyone listening, if you are behind a keyboard or in a cubicle or out on the road driving in the field, if you're not happy or you think that your skills are being wasted, really consider what you're doing and start searching to find that fire and what you want to do. And you had brought up a really good point as well.
Yeah, I think one thing that really struck me during this episode was when Kristina said she waited 2 years just to start her own business, just thinking about starting her business. Ultimately, the stars did align for her. She took that leap. She started her own business, but what if she kept thinking about it? What if she was still thinking about it, or could she be 2 years ahead of where she is right now? So I challenge anyone listening is to ask yourself, is there anything that you are not pursuing? Would you ask your older self if you had any regrets at all? Think about that. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We appreciate all of you and your support. Follow us on Instagram at Finding Fire Podcast. Subscribe to any platform that you listen to your podcast on.
And definitely make sure to buy some cookies or cake because it is delicious. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy.
All right.
I don't even need to listen to it.
Let's do it for fun.
Cool. All right, so we'll just dive right in. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Tell us your story of, I guess, getting to where you are today, getting into the baking industry and starting your own baking business.
Okay. So if you would have asked me a long time ago if I was going to be doing this, I would have said no. What, are you crazy? So actually, it's kind of funny. What started it was I was planning a baby shower for a friend. It was in 2009, and I wanted this specific cake, fondant baby shower. I actually brought a picture of it because here's a fun little thing. I have this frame on my desk. What people don't know is the first cake I ever made is in the back always. I always keep it back there.
Oh, cool.
No matter what I change the picture to. I'm actually embarrassed. I cringe at it. But
first ever,
it
right?
reminds me like where I started, right? So I made this cake for the baby shower.
Oh, cool.
And I brought it and people were like, wait, where did you get that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I made it, and the tinfoil makes me cringe.
I
But
was going to say the rest of it,
I'm like,
I would say for a
yeah,
first
well, I
time
wanted
shot.
this cake, and I went to bakeries in Duluth, and they were like, oh yeah, like there's only one place that we think can make it, and I was like, okay, and it ended up being like
You hold out to the...
$200 some, and I was like, what? I had
Yeah.
no idea.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so, is that
Yeah, that's
good?
good. Yeah.
And so I'm like, I had no idea. And anyway, so I was like, I'm not paying that. I can do it. I'm creative. I can make it. So I set out, YouTube some stuff, and I bring it to the party, and everyone was like, "Where did you get this?" And I said, "Oh, it's no big deal. I made it." after the party, I think I had 3 people come up. Hey, my daughter's getting married next year. Would you wanna? I'm like, absolutely not. No, I was like, this is not a thing that I do.
Yeah.
I'm not interested, especially a wedding, but I would be willing to like bake you something for fun or anything like that. So it evolved into just for fun, just for friends and family, and then more and more and more people started to ask, and I started thinking, okay, maybe I could do this, just like for extra side money.
Yeah.
And then it became, okay, fine, I'll make my vehicle payment on it.
Yeah.
And it just progressed and progressed, and finally I was at a point, I had a few milestones, a milestone birthday, I won't say which one, and then the birth of our second child, my daughter, and then 8 weeks after that was a pivotal point, like my grandma died. And so all of these things kind of made me like self-reflect back on my life, and I was at a point with the business where it was growing and growing and growing, and I was still working full-time, and it was kind of like, okay, all of these things are lining up for a reason. It's not fate anymore, and I think you get in your own head, like you're your own worst critic. You think that you're scared, like there's that fear factor there, and you don't know how to get over it. And I just remember thinking, on maternity leave, I was like, God, I gotta make a decision. Am I gonna jump in and do this? And I can stay home with my kids. Like I had such a hard time sending the first baby off to daycare and going back to work. It was so hard to stomach. And everyone kept telling me, you'll get over it, and I just never did. And so when the second baby came along, it was already planted in my head, like, I have this idea. And I actually never even mentioned it to my husband or anything, until I was on maternity leave, and then my grandma passed away, so that was that month to 8 weeks into my maternity leave, and I was like, I can't pretend that this isn't there. Like, it's inside me, it's been there forever, and I'm gonna act on it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right. And so I mentioned it to my husband, and he at first was like, oh, that's a good idea. He's like, do you think, asking me all these questions, and he was supportive. It was just, and then he was like, yeah, I think you should do it. And then I started to question myself. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. So sorry, that was a long answer.
That's a great answer.
That's, yeah.
But like these moments made me look back and go, what am I doing? Like, have I wasted this last 5-6 years that I wanted to do this and I'm just too scared for some reason?
Right.
Why not take the opportunity to raise my own kids and do a side job that I'm going to make money off of and I love?
Yeah.
So did you ask yourself that like multiple times before? Like what was that one? Was it like you mentioned bringing your kids back for the first time and you questioned, what am I doing right now? Was that the final push over for you to like take action and say, all right, I'm starting?
Yeah, so I was kind of having all of those thoughts, like I went into maternity leave thinking, and actually now that you say that, prior to going out on maternity leave that year, I had entered a leadership program at Maurice's, and I was kind of going through all these things, and I kept all my paperwork, and I was reading this before a couple days ago, and one of the questions was, what percentage of the typical day do you spend doing things that play to your strengths? And my answer was maybe 35%, question mark. And I went into maternity leave with going through this program. Every time I would meet with my mentor and look at the answers, I was like, I'm not doing what I want to be doing. Like, I'm doing it and it's making me money and great, it's a paycheck, but it's not doing anything for me. Like, I loved my job and I loved the people that I work with, but there was like a lack of like that passion that really like drove me,
right.
Like that high that you get, from things, and I wasn't getting that ever. And so I'm like, I was finding that what I was doing on the side was giving me the high, and it wasn't what I was doing day to day.
Yeah.
And I was doing that to pay the bills, and that was great. But inside, I was like screaming to get out. Like, I don't want to be here.
Right.
Like, I don't want to be at this cubicle for the rest of my life. And I turned 30 or 20, and I was like, I have to do this now, because if I don't try it now, when am I going to try it? And I don't, there was a quote about regret. Making big life changes is scary, but it's even scarier regret. And that was what that's when I went out on maternity leave, and I'm like, I can do this. And I poured over spreadsheets, bills, like how can we do this? How can we, what would I need to make in a week, a month, a year? And then my grandma passed away. I think that was the straw, my last straw. I was like, life is too damn short.
Yeah.
Like she spent her entire life working. She was an entrepreneur, owned a business with my grandpa. She worked so hard, and then she got sick, ended up in a nursing home, and I just looked at her life and I'm like, you worked so hard your entire life and then it's over. I mean, I don't want my life to be over and be like, oh, you know, I wish I would have taken a step back from corporate America and raised my kids and did a side hustle for a job. And you know what, if it doesn't work out, I'll go back to work.
Yeah.
I mean, what am I missing? Like, you know, at least I tried it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I think my grandma passing away was kind of that last straw for me.
I think it's a really good point you made, just about like, what would you ask your older self? What would you wish you would have done? If you can answer that, or if you can't answer that question because you did what you did, I think that's success.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen overnight. That's the other thing is, I had set myself. I don't know if I was setting myself up for this, because before you have kids, you don't know what you don't know. Like having a child, bringing a life in, and then losing a life were two huge things for me that happened that year. That I was like, nope. It made me reflect on what I was doing. And then, you know, having kids, you have so much more responsibility, and so it changes your perspective on everything.
Yeah.
And I had already been through that once, and I had, you know, like I said, I had sent him to daycare and I hated it, and I'm like, I don't like this feeling. I feel, you know, out of control a little bit about it. It's not easy running a business and having kids either, but I like the flexibility of it.
At least the challenges with them there by your side, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you had talked about a mentor, and you talked about doing this prior to, you had done this prior to your first child, right?
Yep.
So how long of a process from when you started as a side hustle is, you know, the first picture you showed us, the first item you did, I guess, until you were like, okay, I'm now taking this jump and I'm taking this leap. Like, what was the time frame there?
So 2009, so what is that? 2016 is when I officially stopped, so 7 years.
Oh, okay.
So it was 7 years of side hustle, just for, you know, like I said, in the beginning, it was never about, this is gonna be my job. It just was like a fun hobby, and then I was like, oh, wow, okay, I made that much money this year, okay, that's cool. We're going on vacation.
Yeah.
And then it turned into, wait a minute, like, and then when these things kind of like, it all fell into place, like I said, and it just seemed like the universe was like, here you go, and I was still kind of like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I remember the day I decided, like, I'm doing this. And it was not, it was exhilarating. It was scary.
Yeah.
Looking back, I would have thought maybe I was a little off my rocker at the moment. Like, what did you just do? You quit your job? Yeah.
You have to be that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people in this situation that just think they want to do something, or they want to start their own business, but they just don't. They're afraid of change, they're afraid to get uncomfortable, they're complacent, which I think is a huge it doesn't work if you're complacent.
And I think that like I was in that spot, like that very spot, like I can do it. No, I can't. Yes, I can. No, I can't. Nope, it won't work. I don't have a 401k. What am I going to do for this?
Yeah.
How will it benefits this and that? And I think I was there for 2 years. I was in that space in between having my first kid and my second.
Yeah.
Because that's the space that I was in for 2 years. And meanwhile, the numbers kept going up, and I'm like, okay, we got something here.
Yeah.
And then it was about 2 years in, so after my 2 years of going full force, which really, I had 2 kids, so I was really working part-time.
Sure. Yeah.
I had almost made up my income that I was making from Reese's, and I was like, this isn't real. I had to make a mistake somewhere here. And I just was like so excited. Like I was literally like shaking. Right?
Yeah.
I remember my husband came home and I'm like, look at this. And he's like, good for you.
Cool.
And I'm just like, I never ever imagined that it would be at that point.
Yeah. Is that emotional? Like that feeling, right?
Yeah.
Like I made what I made. I made what I made in my corporate job. Like
Yeah.
But you made it all yourself. I mean, all yourself. You were like getting
Yeah.
paid by. I mean, you're.
There's something like exhilarating about being in the driver's seat, and yes, it's stressful as an entrepreneur to make like all of the decisions. Yes, it's not only like the making of the pretty stuff. It's everything before that, taking the order, the thousands of emails that go back and forth, the phone calls. Like there's all of that behind the scenes that people don't see, and that's stress. Like there's a lot of stress on you, like especially weddings, like driving a wedding cake. For me, it's like I don't have a backup plan. So if someone pulls out in front of me and I have to slam on my brakes and the cake gets like big knock on wood, that has never happened, but like there's things like that. It's like it's all on me. There's nobody. I have no team. You know, it's just me. There's things that are not so great about it in terms of that, like the challenges, but like I said, that's that fear piece too. That's you're gonna hold yourself back because you're scared of X, Y, and Z. I was over that hump. Like I'm not gonna do this anymore.
Do you ever think, or maybe I don't know if regret's the right word, but do you ever wish that you would have done it earlier, or do you think it was like a good time? Was it like, okay, this worked out as it should?
I think it was a good time. Like looking back, I don't regret. I had a hard time sending the first one, you know, off and saying, yep, I have this business, but I wasn't at the point where I was the second time around.
Sure.
And things were aligned. Like my husband had, was doing really well at his job. We were able to switch benefits over to him. If that wasn't there, I'm not sure. You know, because we were on my benefits at the time, the first time, and second baby, we were switching over. So there were all these things that were a little bit different. And I think it was, like I said, I kind of, in a sense, woke up one morning and I was like, done. I'm calling today. I'm calling my boss.
Wow.
And I remember, oh God, I was so scared.
Do you do it in the morning or the afternoon?
Oh man, I gotta think. I don't remember, but I called her twice and hung up twice before I called. And she knew I was calling. We had this call set up, but she didn't know when. It was kind of like, call me this week and we'll talk about you coming back.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Because that was after that 8-week mark. But I wanted to be fair and give my 2 weeks. I wasn't gonna go right up to my maternity leave date, and so I called her and she's like, hey, and I'm not sure on her end, like she thought I was coming back or not. I think she kind of could feel me out a little bit, but I was shaking, sweating, like my voice was cracking. I was like, and she was kind of going on and on about me coming back, and I stopped her and I was like, I gotta stop you. I'm like, I have just had some things happen while I'm on leave, and you know that I have, my business, and I was just kind of explaining, like, I'm not coming back. And the words came out of my mouth, and I was like, oh God, did I just do? And I have goosebumps just talking about it, because it's, like I said, it's like exhilarating, but then it's scary. Like I hung up the phone, and at that point I remember I was holding the baby, and I'm like, oh God, what did I just do? And I went to the bathroom, I started bawling in the mirror. I was looking at myself like, get it together. And I'm pretty sure it was afternoon, because there was a couple hours before my husband's come home, like, I need an adult to talk to about this. Right. And I was like pacing the floors, and the first phone call I made was to my dad. And he owns several businesses, so he's always been kind of my inspiration. And I had talked to him about it a couple times, and I don't think he thought I was as serious as I was, because the day I called him and I said, I just quit my job. And I wasn't sure how he was going to react. Yeah. He's like, what? Good for you.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, oh, God, I just let out this big sigh, and I was bawling on the phone with him, and he's like, it's going to be okay. He's like, you can do this. You're such a hard worker, and you've got this. And I got that reaction from several people, and it shocked me. Like I was shocked, because I thought people were gonna be like, are you nuts? Yeah. I think that's this is part of my story too, is that I started working when I was 11. Okay, I come from a really small town. Okay, so it's a family business, and so I started. We were out to eat one night at a family restaurant or a local restaurant owned by cousins, so family.
Yeah.
And one of the waitresses had quit, and so there was one waitress, and the dining room was full, and I'm like, oh my god, she needs help. And my dad's like, just get up and start putting the dishes and like bussing the tables. And so I started doing that, and the owner was like, do you want a job? And I'm like, sure. I'm like, I'm only 11. And so I started by like bussing, doing the dishes. By 12, I was waitressing. 13 and 14, they trained me and I was cooking. I don't want to say legally what age I was when I started bartending. But by the time I was like,
11
yeah, right? By the time I was 17, 18, I was managing, like I was running it. Like they would say, hey, Kristina, we've got to go run some errands. You close down tonight. Here are the keys. I'm like, holy moly, okay. And so I'm thankful for that because it set me up for success and like learning hard work and all these different aspects of a business.
Yeah.
If I didn't have that, I don't know if I would have ever like be in this spot I am now. And I think the combination of that and my dad, like he was always instilling hard work in us. So that's the other thing is like you do all these things you're supposed to do. You get good grades, you go to college, you graduate, you get a job with corporate because that's what everyone does, right?
Yeah.
And you start working and you work hard because that's what you're taught. And you're taught that working hard equals success. And it doesn't always equal the success you want though.
Yeah.
Like I was getting that and I was getting there and I was like crawling to like get promoted, promote me, like look at me. And I got sick of the look at me, look what I can do. And it's very competitive and it's not that I'm not competitive in nature because I am a little bit, but the success wasn't equaling like a passion for me. Like I just could feel it. I'm like, this just isn't me. Like I can do the job.
Yeah.
And I just it wasn't
You had a
adding
foundation.
up.
You had a foundation, no less, like you said. I mean, whether or not it's deep, if someone wants to pursue corporate and that's like what they love, right? Or if someone wants to pursue their own business, I think that foundation of work ethic and,
And I can see I could see the people. Like when I started to go through this program of strengths and weaknesses and leadership, I could see the people around me that loved their job, like were passionate about corporate.
Yeah.
And I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You can look around and you can be like, oh, okay.
Yep.
But there are, I'm not going to say what, but there are characteristics that go along with that.
Yeah.
And some of them I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that to get there. I won't. I'm not, I don't feel right about that. Or I can't do that.
Exactly.
And so that's kind of that feeling that I kept getting when I was going through these questions and I kept like pushing it back. Like, I want to own my own business. I wanted to write, I want to own my own business.
Yeah.
But in the back, I was like, no, that's not the answer they want to hear. They want to hear, I want to do that,
Right.
Yeah.
And so I suppressed it for a while, for a long time, like those 2 years, I was like suppressing it, like stop. But then it bubbled over and I was like, nope, this is it.
Yeah.
We're running with it now.
That's good to hear. Like all the support you said you got when you first started. We think it's super important. Kind of a common thing we've heard is surrounding yourself with like-minded people. Like you're always going to have the people that are going to drag you down.
Naysayers or whatever, right?
Yep. You're gonna have a corporate life, but then you're gonna have people that share the same like passion and fire that you have. That you can clearly tell when you're talking about your own business.
Yeah. It's even if I was in a position where I was making half of what I made, I think I'd still be happier right now. Like honestly, sitting here doing my own thing, making my own schedule, raising my kids, now homeschooling my kids. That wasn't part of the plan.
Yeah, right. That's true.
But I think like life throws you things for a reason, and I was not woke up to it until all the stars aligned. I was like, okay, this is weird.
Yeah.
It's just like I don't know. I know a lot of people listening, like entrepreneurs, they're scared. Like fear is probably the number one reason why people just don't jump in.
Yeah.
And I totally get that. It took me 2 years to even just get over that hump.
should almost be, would you say, like a reason to jump into it? Like you're gonna face fear every single day.
Right, and
Things are changing every single
and
day.
it's not going to be perfect. Like I sat there, like I said, I poured over spreadsheets, like how can I make this work? But the reality is you don't know until you get into it, and you just kind of go along. You face challenges as they come up because, I mean, let's be real, that's what you're doing in your other job too. It's just a different, like there's a lot more pressure onto it. It's just you.
When a pandemic comes up.
Yeah, well, throw another one in there. Why not? Another iron in the fire.
But security too, like, I mean, that, and it goes along with fear, right?
Yeah,
like you're saying,
security
like,
is a big one.
I'm secure in the job, and I've, like you said, the 401k, the retirement, the benefits, whatever. The fear of not having that, and what am I going to do is part of what you're saying, you know, as far as holding people back.
Yeah, and I'm very, something about me too is like, I'm very financially, I don't want to say financially driven, but I'm conscious of financials. And so I had a goal for myself of this needs to be in the bank before I ever quit.
Sure.
Just in case. Right? So I need X amount of years of income here before, and everything that I made from those years, those 7 years prior to quitting was just, I never paid myself. It all went into a savings account. And I credit my dad for that because we'd get like $50 from grandma for our birthdays. What are you going to do with it? And I was like, I'm going to save it. He's like, yeah. Like most kids are like, I'm going to the candy store. Like, nope, I'm going to save it. And I worked a lot. Like I started when I was 11. I paid cash for college. I went through college. I worked through college at Blackwoods. I paid cash. And like I tell some people that now, and they're like,
blows their mind.
Any student loans, and I got it all.
Yep.
That's a really good tip.
I'm so glad I did that.
Yeah.
That has saved me so much. And it's given me this opportunity to like have that savings account. I would never, I mean, let's be honest, like if I was paying student loans, that would be an extra how many more on top of my bills that I was already looking at going,
That 7 years of saving would have been 7 years of debt payoff.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah,
and I couldn't stomach that. That was one of the smartest things that I've ever been taught by my dad, ever. Like, I'm like so thankful for that.
Awesome.
You had mentioned actually, Ryan, surrounding yourself with like the right people and like-minded people.
Sure.
And I think obviously for you or anybody that's looking to take a leap, it's really nice to have someone be super supportive and be like, nice job, heck yeah, good work. I'm like, you know, rather than being like, oh no, what'd you do? I think that's kind of good on the opposite end of the spectrum for people to kind of think about and realize and say, if someone's taken like that leap or that jump, it's good to be supportive. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being critical to some extent, right? But it's really good to be like, all right, good job.
The more comfortable I've become with this, like, because now what, 4 years in to doing this full time, I've had of course I come across people that are like in the wedding industry, for example, I've had someone come up to me and be like, oh, but aren't you concerned about your competition? And I'm like, yeah. You know, I'm like, now I used to be like, oh God, what? And now, like 4 years ago, that would have been my reaction. Now I'm like, what? No. Like, I'm comfortable in my skin. Like, this is what I provide. And I don't let that bring me down. It almost fires me up more.
Sure.
Because I'm like, no, tell me I can't do something and I'll do it anyway.
Awesome.
So it's like that attitude. I mean, not to be not too crazy over the top, but I mean, to a point, I get why people say that. And there's one thing that sticks out to me that someone said to me once that I'll never forget. It was, so when are you going back to work? This was like 3 years into doing this full time. And I'm like, I never stopped working.
Oh,
and in fact, I don't know if I want to say this on record with Maurice's, but I don't think I've ever worked as hard as I've worked in the last 4 years.
Right.
Ever in my life.
Awesome.
And so the difference is I'm passionate about it.
Yeah.
Like there's no, it doesn't feel like I'm working. And in fact, my husband, he'll be like, we'll be in bed and he'll lean over and like close my book. Like my calendar. Like, he's like, you should probably watch some TV. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And it's hard because it's like we have small kids, right? So it's a lot of early mornings, a lot of late nights. It's a lot of switching in between, like squeezing in when I can.
Yeah.
So that's hard. But I think you get what you put into it. So, and when you want to put into it, you're better off.
Yeah. Right.
it's different.
Cool.
So we talked about your 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about you taking the leap, starting your own business. You talked about your baking business. What's your business name? Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so it's called Sugar on Top Sweet Shop, and there's been a few tweaks in between. Like when I first started, it was Sugar on Top Bakery, and due to domain, some legal issues, I decided to switch it to Sweet Shop. So it was more encompassing too. And I actually just called my sister in the parking lot before I came in.
Yeah.
I remember brainstorming with her about a name, and I'm like, I like this, but I don't like this, and I kind of like sugar, but like I want sugar in it, but I'm not sure. And we were kind of brainstorming, and I had a list and lists of names. I'm like, and I think the more you look at it, the more you're like, no, that's not
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And you kind of talk yourself out of it. And she had called me, and she's like, sugar on top. I'm like, yes. And
Cool.
so we were both like, yep, this is it.
Cool.
And then I added the Sweet Shop, and then, like I said, there were some changes because I went into it being an LLC, so I had to change it a little bit. But
Okay.
I think people know me as Sugar on Top, so it doesn't matter if it's bakery or Sweet Shop.
Yeah, it's the first part of it that resonates.
Yeah. And then the logo was so fun to make because I'm like, I contacted someone, I'm like, I know I want sugar, like the word sugar on the top, because like
Yeah.
sugar on top. She's
That
like,
makes
yeah.
sense.
And
It's
I'm like,
literal.
can we do like a whisk and like put the
Yeah.
sugar on? And she's like, yes. And so that was really fun. Like I actually started doing that the day after I put my 2 weeks notice in. So
Yeah.
I gotta get going. I need a logo.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need all these things.
That's the fun stuff though, right?
It is. It's
Yeah.
so fun. And my sister is really creative like that too. It's so funny. Now that I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh, my sister owns a business, my brother owns a business. Okay, I guess all of us own
Yeah.
it. It's just kind of, I think it's like when it's in your blood, it's like in your
Yeah.
blood.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, because you answered one of the questions I had for you. Like, you mentioned mentors, but like, who influenced you growing up? And obviously, you said your dad, and growing up in a small business, working when you're super young.
Yeah, and I also, when I was at Blackwoods, I had somebody that really made an impact on me. Her name was Julie. And she just like, every time I sat down with her, I could see her passion for the restaurant business. I was like, I want that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wasn't, like everything she said to me, I was like, yes. And I was so there with her. And like the one thing that she really drove home to me was customer service. How important it is, like just to take care of people.
Yeah.
Know them by their names.
Yeah.
Call them by their names. Like don't ever underestimate the power of people. Like was one of
Yeah.
the things that she told me, and I'll never forget that. Like she would train me to learn the people that were coming into Blackwoods, like learn them by name, call them by
Yeah.
name, the frequent people.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, was she right?
Yeah.
And now I do that with my people, and they love it. And I send them little, like my top clients, I send them some little things every once in a while, like, hey,
Cool.
you know what? I got these little
Awesome.
magnets made. Here you
Awesome.
go, put it on
Yeah.
your fridge.
Yeah.
Things like that, like that makes a difference.
Big time.
And that was one thing that I took away from her too.
That's really funny you mentioned that actually. With the three of us, Matt, who's not here today, obviously, but one of his pieces of advice was to like call people by name, because how much like people kind of perk up if you hear, if you hear your name, it's like, oh, someone like they know it's not just hey you or how you doing or what's up.
Right.
It's the powerful of that connection and like the personal, and you remember it. So
Yeah.
that's really cool that you said that actually.
Yeah, well, and I'm terrible with names normally.
Yeah, me too.
So it was hard for me at first. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. God, is it Bill? I
Yes.
can't remember his name. And she's like, you know what? Even if you get it wrong, they're gonna be flattered that you tried.
You should try.
I was like, really? I don't know about that, but yeah, I'm usually terrible with names.
What's your tip on how do you remember people's names?
So when I was working at the restaurant, I would, Julie was like, say it 3 times, just
Yeah.
keep saying it. And
Like
once
out
you
loud or
get
more?
it, you're gonna match that face.
Yeah.
And you're gonna see them come in and you're gonna know.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, I got this.
Cool.
And it wasn't, at first, the first few times were hard.
Yeah.
It was like, I like confident, like walk up, like, hey!
Yeah, right.
How are you guys doing? It's good to see you again. And so it's a learned habit.
Yeah.
But yeah, and a lot of times with my clients, I don't see them face to face until they're actually picking up. So I've had all this time but I mean, my base is a lot smaller than what I was used to at walking in the door at Blackwood's,
Sure.
but it's the same concept.
Absolutely.
Who would you say, kind of a two-part question, do you have a specialty in what you bake? And then I guess who is your kind of ideal client, I guess, if I were to call
Yeah.
Sugar and Top Sweet Shop, what could I expect from your business or the
So
product?
it's funny you bring that up because 2020 was going to be my year to pivot
Yeah.
more towards weddings, and guess
Okay.
what?
Yeah,
That didn't happen.
sure.
So I wanted to like really hone in on the brides because if I were to answer that the way I want to answer it, it would be brides.
Okay.
But my joke kind of is brides and anyone with a birthday is my ideal client.
Fair enough.
But really, I would say brides number one. Number two would probably be moms, like moms of smaller kids. This birthday thing that's happening right now, like the big Pinterest style birthday,
Mhm.
like, that's a thing.
Oh yeah.
Whether you
Yeah.
want to say so or not.
Yeah.
And then this DIY craze that's happening, like DIYers are big, and I brought one of the DIY kits that I do.
Okay.
People, so it's, brides are probably my number one when it comes to like my money makers
Okay.
and my bread and butter.
Sure.
But then there's all of these other things on the side, and there's so many like directions that my mind, like I think this is like entrepreneur thing totally. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like squirrel, like, oh yeah, I can do that, I can do this. There's like different avenues that I could go, but I have to hold myself in like, okay, who are your people that you wanna please the most?
Yeah.
And then make room for the others.
Yeah.
And so I have to remember that. I have to remind myself of that often. This year has been different, but I've been able to kind of pivot in the other direction this year, and it's saved me
Mm-hmm.
this year. And my sales are way down this year, but I don't know who's not right
Yeah.
now.
Right.
So I was trying to get through that. But yeah, I think that's my ideal. And it's funny because remember when I said I would never do that?
Yeah.
Never do a wedding. That's too
Yeah.
much stress.
And now that's your ideal.
And every time, so the drive there is terrible, stressful.
Mhm.
But when I drop that cake off and I see it in all its glory, set up on a table, I'm like, oh, yes!
Yeah.
Like when I'm driving away, that feeling,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, yep, this is what I do what I do.
Yeah.
Stress relief and like you're
It's like crank
okay.
the radio, drive like
Yeah.
crazy, take all the corners.
Like,
Because
I don't
I
care if it's a
can.
red light, I'm going.
That's my most recent thing. It's funny. I want to make a decal for the back of my car. I'm sorry I'm slow. I have a cake
Yeah.
on board.
yeah. Like the baby on board too.
Yes,
Right.
a cake on board. Like
Yeah.
you need like something. 'Cause
Yes.
Sometimes people pass you with like a 4-tier wedding cake, and I'm like,
Yeah.
they're looking at me like, what is your problem? Why
Yeah.
are you driving so slow?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I know that's like people like have a boat or a trailer or something. You're like, there's something important on board
Yes.
that you need to be
Yep.
careful with. So I get it.
Yes.
It may anger you if you have road rage, but
Yes.
it makes sense.
I need
So,
like red flashing lights.
yes.
So the baking industry, that you're in, like you're part of a person's special moment, whatever that might be, a wedding, a birthday. Like, why bake? Did you get into baking for that reason, do you think? Like, you dig deep and like, why do you bake? Why did you open up your baking business?
Yeah, and so this stems back to grandma again. Like she was the one who I would always bake with. Cookies. In fact, I use her sugar cookie recipe. It's just
Okay.
kind of fun. Incorporate some of her recipes into my baking business. She was just always the one that I baked with. My mom, I would bake and cook with my mom too. It was just something that I guess for pastime. Like we like to eat. I like to eat food.
Mhm.
And so
Amen.
we would always be baking, cooking, doing something. I do remember like home ec, like when I really started to dig deep on this question when I saw it, I was like,
Yeah.
what is it really? And there wasn't really a connect, like I like to bake, but I never saw that becoming what it is for me now. And in fact, I mean, I'll do the baking part, and the baking part's the same. So like you make a cake, it's the same cake
Yeah.
basically on the inside,
Right.
but the outside is the part where I get like giddy. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I can
Creativity.
create this with blank canvas.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's like I get through that baking part, and then I'm like, yeah, now the fun begins.
Sure.
Because I set up my schedule where it's like certain days are for baking, certain days are for decorating.
Okay.
It's got to be in sync because you gotta bake before you can decorate, and sometimes I get ahead of myself.
Yeah, right.
But it's like I do love the baking piece. That's the other thing about a hobby turned into a job is it can get a little stale after a while. So you
Sure.
kind of have to make it fun. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think one of my big things is the atmosphere that I'm in, like putting on music that I'm jamming out to while I'm baking, getting through that part that I don't like.
Mhm.
And if there is something, I've gotten better at this, but I think we'll maybe touch on this later, but like a challenge is saying no. So if someone calls and it's like, hey, this is what I want, I'm envisioning this. And I'm not really into like, whatever that is. Like, I don't know if I can do that. Like, you kind of start second guessing. And before I put myself in that situation where I'm like, yes, I'll do it, I have to really step back and be like, can I do this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, kind of, and do I want to do this? Like, do I want to spend my time doing something more that I really do enjoy?
Yeah.
And that comes in with, like, someone calls and says, I know this isn't on your menu, but would you make this for me? And I'm like, it's not really, like, there's that fine line there where, like, in the beginning, I was, yes. I wanted to get anyone and everybody.
Yep.
Like, to get that, have the testimonials and build up the business.
Right.
But now I'm a little bit more honed into what I specialize, and I would say it's the cakes, wedding cakes, birthday cakes. I dabbled in cookies, and now I'm like full blown do cookies. Never thought I would really get into that. I'm like, no, I don't have the patience for the frosting. It takes like 8 hours to dry.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't really have patience for that. I like more satisfaction, but no, I've gotten into it and I really like it. But I'm also doing the things that I want. Like, I brought the Minnesota plaid cookie. When I first did, like, I had the idea, like, oh, I want a Minnesota shaped cookie, but I want to do plaid on it. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
It's like people love buffalo plaid.
Yeah.
Yep.
And my dad owns a logging company. It's one of the things that he owns. So, like, the buffalo plaid's just been a thing.
Mhm.
So, like, I'm making my dad this cake. It's going to be
Yeah.
buffalo, and then I'm going to make cookies, and they're going to be buffalo plaid.
Yes.
And so I had this idea, and I actually took a edible marker, and I was coloring the top of the cookie, like making the plaid by hand.
Yeah.
I'm like, what am I doing? And I knew there was like stencils out there and stuff, and I have a machine, so I printed my own stencil, and there you go. I bought an airbrush machine, and
Oh,
now
nice.
what used to take me, 3-4 minutes a cookie now takes me 10 seconds.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and that's like you said. The patience of certain things, like maybe you don't enjoy like the waiting and like instant gratification. Now
Yeah.
you kind of get that, right?
Yep. So there's certain things, but for the most part, it's what I stick to is I do cakes, I do cookies, and then the one thing that I'm known for is the pies on a stick, which I brought you guys some.
Yeah,
And those
alright.
are also Minnesota shaped, but I
Cool.
do like all kinds of shapes.
Yeah.
And that kind of stemmed from someone actually called me. I believe it was a bride. She's probably listening. Going, oh, yeah. And she was like, hey, I want something creative. But I want pies, but like, have you ever done this and that? And together we kind of came up with doing them in a shape. And I was like, what if we put them on a stick? And she's like, yes.
Seems like
And
such
so,
a
like-
Minnesota thing.
Yeah, right? Like,
Yeah.
pie on a stick.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So many people have been like, you need to have a booth at the state fair. I'm like,
Yeah.
I should.
Absolutely.
I may or may not have entered it, just haven't heard back yet.
2021 plan, right?
Well, see, and that's the thing is like, that's an example. I'm like, was scared to submit it for so long.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, I don't have a plan. Like, how am I going to make thousands of these?
Yeah.
I make them all by hand with a fork,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I'm like, screw it. I'm submitting the idea, and
Yeah.
if they call me, then I'll figure it
Figure
out.
it out.
Yeah.
Well, they make cookies.
Yeah.
Grandma's.
Martha.
Yeah.
They make millions
Yes.
on those
Dude,
cookies.
you are making millions of these pies on a stick. Oh my god.
There's 2 people that I want to talk to in the Twin Cities, and she's one of them. The
Yes,
girl
I
with
imagine
that.
so.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I just love the story of the cookie.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a chocolate chip freaking cookie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. In a bucket.
Bucket.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah,
right.
a pie on a stick?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's going there. You might
Cool.
see me there one year.
Cool. That's awesome. That's awesome. You heard it here, right?
Yeah. And there, last time I checked, there's like a 3 or 4 year waiting list to get a booth.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Well, you gotta start somewhere,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you're on it.
I mean, I might have it figured out by a few years, you know?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, so like that's just an example of, I mean, there are some things, I know this is on here, like you do come up with your own ideas. A lot of times it's me and the client coming up with it together,
Sure.
or it's a lot, like there is not a lot of times where I just have a week, oh, I don't have anything going on this week, but I love those weeks. I'm like, hey, I wanted to try this and I'm gonna bake, and like that is the best when I can bake for fun and just do it.
Where
what
does
I
that
want
all
to
go? Who gets to eat it all?
I give it away.
Okay.
I either like if I do something new, sometimes I do a giveaway on my page, like give it away to
Oh,
somebody,
sure.
like hey, share my page, and it kind of helps me with my network, like my Instagram and Facebook, building that. I give it to family, friends, neighbors. Hey, try this out. It's a new recipe.
Kid's husband.
Yeah. And like I said, it doesn't happen as much as I would like, but I think that's a good thing,
Yeah,
right?
right.
That I don't have those gaps.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like trial and error too. It's you learn as you go.
Yeah.
Like I'm self-taught baker. Like I never knew anything about.
Yeah.
I mean, I made cookies and cakes beforehand, but not like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
You start to build up your expertise,
and I've
right?
and I've always had this like creative bug in me. Like I love drawing, I love painting.
Mm-hmm.
Never did I think I could do it in a food form though.
Yeah.
Which is like when I figured that out, you should have seen. I was like, yes.
The combination.
I am new. This is awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
So how do you continue to scale in the baking industry and keeping up with consumer demands? Is it, and then also working from home? Like, is it constant? Not constantly, but you're investing in products to help with efficiency, and then inventory, like at home. Like, how does that whole process work? And also growing your business and making more revenue and scaling.
Yeah, so I would mentioned earlier we built a house. When we built, I made a ginormous pantry. It's like the size of a room.
Okay.
So I have all of my stuff organized there. In addition to baking from home, and we had touched on this, but like there's different regulations and laws with food in the health department, and so you can do some things from home, and then some things I do have a separate commercial space that I rent on an as-needed basis. And that's been awesome because there are some venues that require you to have that kind of licensing to do cakes or weddings in their facility. So yeah, it's a combination of having space to like organize it, because I always say organized chaos. Like that's what I feel like it is when I walk in the pantry sometimes, and I have to stop working. Like I have to fix this or I'm not gonna be able to continue on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like trends come out. Like now, I'm sure, I don't know if you've seen this, but like the hot cocoa bomb, and it's out here right now, and I've ordered my molds and they've been on hold, and I'm getting very impatient because everyone's ordering hot cocoa molds.
Yeah,
everyone's at home and they want to make hot cocoa bombs.
Yeah.
So like that's something that I want to try, but I've got to wait for my stuff to come. But I think once you get, for me, it's like you get the basics, like your round cake pans, your square, you have all that, and those things you reuse all the time. And then there's other things that I have on, honestly, like all the websites, Webstront, I use a lot in Amazon, and they just keep coming. Like I have them booked, so every month I get this. So I get like all my cake rounds and things that I use day to day.
It's like the behind the, you mentioned the behind the scenes of being a owner of a baking company. Like you see the product, but like what goes on making the product, what are the products you have to use, and keeping up with all
that
that.
all takes time. It's like insane the amount of time that goes into that back. Because I've had many times where I've walked in the pantry and go, oh no, I have what I need, and I know I can't. And now Amazon Prime is like not 2 days, and so it's like, no, I can't. I'm such a procrastinator.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm not gonna lie, I've been known to procrastinate. That's probably one of my downfalls a little bit. And so I mean, there's times where you do what you gotta do. Like, okay, guess I'm going to Hobby Lobby to see what they got. So I can make something to support my cake or whatever it is. But I've gotten good at scheduling things on like for deliveries. I know I go through X amount of boards per week, so I'm just gonna order 100 per month or whatever it is.
Sure.
So I've got a pretty good stock now and a system, whereas before I didn't. But I'm getting there.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, would you say like you're looking for stuff to like stay, not stuff that's currently in like you said, the cocoa farms, like, hey, I don't want to be at that point when it's happening. I want to try to be ahead of it. So like, are there some of those things that you're kind of looking forward to? Like, they got like, I don't know if they got baking trade shows, but like things like that. Where it's like, hey, the newest and latest and greatest, and how is this going to help you in like the next year or two because it'll be popular.
Yes, and there was actually there was one coming up in Minneapolis that got canceled that I was gonna go to, but yes, I like, that's the part of me, like, right now where I'm at that point where I'm like scaling, like I could scale up, but like how do I get there? Like there's some planning that needs to happen, and I get so excited when I'm like, yes, I could do this, and then I'm gonna hire somebody, and then I get to do more of that fun stuff where I'm like out there looking for the next thing.
Yeah.
That's where I want to go, but I have to reel myself back in. And why did you start doing this? Because you wanted to spend more time with your kids when they're small.
Yeah.
So I know I'm gonna get there,
Yeah.
and I keep saying when they're all in school, I'm going like to the wall. It's
Yeah.
gonna be like
Yeah.
over the top. And so I try to give myself those times in my schedule, and I actually schedule myself. I call it grind time. I put it on the calendar. If I see a gap, like 2-3 days, I put grind time, and that's when I like sit down at the computer, research things. What are the trends? What's going on?
Yeah.
And we're in Duluth, like, so we're not like the trendiest top of, right?
Yeah.
So like looking at all of the big bakeries and things like that's fun for me to do. Like what's going on in New York? What's going on in LA? What's going on in Minneapolis?
Sure.
Like these bigger cities where there are bigger bakeries doing all these fun things. Like, and then I get down to like the nitty gritty. Like if there's something that I want to hone in on during grind time, I'll put like marketing or packaging. Like I need to really dive into packaging and get new boxes, new colors, order the ribbon, source all of those things.
Yeah.
So like those, I truly enjoy working on that. I don't always get the time to do that right now.
Yeah. Right.
At least you're spending the time investing in your knowledge in it too. So that's typically what we see is, I'm in the healthcare industry and the marketing side, but East Coast, West Coast, those are kind of the trendy things that are happening, and it slowly trickles into the Midwest. And if you start early in the Midwest, you're like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
Well, that's not going on in the baking industry or the healthcare industry. Is like, well, take a step back and look at
It'll be here.
it'll be here. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And one thing that I've really picked up on and have so wanted to invest time, I just have not done it, is like the education piece and the DIYers out there. Like, and now everything's become so digital.
Yeah.
I've done classes before in person, like decorating. I've held them at Hobby Lobby. I've held them at Huckleberry downtown Duluth. And I'm like, why can't I do this online? Anybody could do it then. Like, hey, you're in your own kitchen. You come to class with a baked cake, and I'm going to teach you how to decorate it. Like, that is a goal of mine to like start doing, offering classes online, especially now when people are going to be stuck home for a while.
Yeah.
And
Like the
so
steward, right?
Yeah. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So like, just I've always been about like community over competition. When I decided I'm going to do this full time, there were so many people that were so supportive, and I actually work with quite a few people that do the same thing or are in food related industry, and everyone's so supportive. And like I always say, like it's so important to me. The people are important, right? So the connections that you make, the relationships. That's why I think community over competition is like, someone reaches out to me and I can't or don't have the time or ability to do something. I have people in my back pocket that I know do the same thing. And I'm going to refer them on, and I'm getting that in return too. Like I think there's a big, you can unleash a beast by doing that.
Paid for type of mentality.
Yeah, it's
what goes around comes around.
like, I don't know, like, are you my competition or are we in this together? Because I feel like there's room for both, and I think that what I do good, someone else may do something else good, like that I don't do. And so I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna send you over here. And they're doing the same for me. I'm seeing that already. And I've, like, for instance, I don't do macaroons. Like, I've tried it, can't do it. I'm like, nope, not doing this. Wasting my time, I don't enjoy it. Like, they're flat. I don't get it. Like, I don't get it. And so I have a girl that I call whenever I need macaroons for a cake. I'm like, hey, I need you. She's like,
macaroon
sweet.
lady.
Macaroons.
Macaroon hook up.
And she sent people my way too, so I'm like, this is what,
great.
I'm all about that. And like I said, also with the education piece, I want to help people like me, specifically baking. It's hard. It's like there's a lot of regulation. You don't know which way to go. And so like I would love to create a course or, put something together for people that want to do this. Like I'm serious, I want to do a home business. How do I do it? How do I start?
Right.
Or they're in home right now and they want to transition to commercial. How do I do that?
Sure.
Like what are the differences? What licensing do I need? What hoops do I jump through?
Yeah.
Like I'd love to put what I learned, because I learned so much. The research that I did,
All up here, right?
make your head spin. There's just a lot out there, and you don't know what you don't know, and so I'd love to help anybody who wants that. So I was thinking about creating that. I have ideas, I just have not put it out there yet.
That's a great avenue that has really not a whole lot to do with the industry you're in. It's more or less the business expertise you bring to the table.
Yeah.
It could apply to someone who's doing the same type of business, but that's again kind of what to you it said, branching out. How do you, or what you said, scale up?
Yeah.
What's the next level? What else can you do to progress the business, right?
Yeah, and I think the one thing holding me back right now from scaling up is the time factor.
Yeah.
To sit down and not that you need a perfect plan, but you do need a plan to scale up, because you don't want to get in a situation where you're like, okay, I'm doing this, and then all of a sudden your orders triple and you can't support it.
Right.
Because then you're gonna let all of these people down that you're trying to
Built up the relationship.
Yeah, and you've come this far, and it's like, okay, I don't want to do too quickly here. I don't want to grow too fast either.
Yeah.
And a lot of people ask me, why are you opening a storefront? It's just, I'm not gonna lie, I can see the white and gold and pink awning. I can see it. But I'm just not there right now.
Yeah.
And this is actually working out perfectly, ideally for me, not having that extra overhead. Especially now this year with the curveballs with COVID, it's like if I would have had that, I don't know if I would have survived it.
Yeah.
And I might have been back in this position, working from home or working from the rented space versus owning it.
Right.
So I'm thankful for that. I think there's something to learn about that, the investment piece of it, because the kitchen is so expensive. I've looked into it. I've actually toured this strip
Yeah.
sitting
Oh, sure.
for a
Right.
space several times.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I couldn't swing it at the time. I was like, nope, too much of a risk right now for where I'm at. I have had people, just had people contract with me
Sure.
to help me, mainly with packaging and things that I just didn't want to spend the time on, where I could just fully decorate and they could take it from there.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had people help me with the baking piece and the packaging piece, and I would like to get back to that. I'd like to hire. So if there's anyone interested,
Yeah.
reach out to me. I want to be a baking apprentice.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of there right now. I feel
Awesome.
like that turn is coming here this spring.
Okay.
So
Awesome. That was one of our what's next for your
Yeah.
business, and that was
yeah, because like I said, I want to focus more on a little bit more of that education piece, but also the innovative, getting my ducks in a row for being able to scale. Because I've been thinking about it for a long time. It's just I got it. Like I said, sometimes I have to step back and go, why did you do this? You gotta
Yeah,
remember that
that's-
too.
and it goes back to self-awareness and patience. Not just rushing into things, and then to your point, you're just like, okay, there's way too much. I'm letting my clients down who I built that relationship up with, but
Yep.
you did it because you want to spend more time with the kids.
Yep.
At this point, now you're ready to take that curve to the next step.
Yep.
Awesome.
Very cool.
So 2 questions to conclude. What is one thing that people don't know about baking?
Oh, that one.
Like, here's a fresh cookie.
Never, ever, ever bake with cold eggs.
Oh.
Oh, you have to have room temperature eggs. Did you know that?
No.
It's good enough.
I do like to bake sometimes, but I did not know that.
The reason is because when they're cold, the proteins it's different than when they're at room temperature. They mix into the batter better, which helps things rise better, bake more evenly. Whereas if they're cold, you're mixing with warm ingredients, and you're kind of, the science of it isn't right there. So everything's at the same temperature, it's better.
Alright.
So I always take my eggs out at least 2 to 3 hours before I bake.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Another one that is funny when I teach, I've not done a lot of classes, but I've done 3-4 classes, and measuring flour. There's a way to do, a lot of people just grab the measuring cup and scoop into the flour.
Sure.
Nope. you end up with way more flour. You have to
Process.
scoop it out and put it, like the fast way of doing it is scooping it out.
Yeah.
I would love if everyone would sift their flour, but nobody has time for that. So I always say like whisk it. If you don't have time to sift it, whisk it with a whisk, and it like aerates it, kind of
Yeah.
puffs it up. Because if you think about packaging, like a bag of chips, it like settles down.
Right.
And the same thing happens with flour. If you packing it in, you're gonna mess up your recipe
Yeah.
because you're getting too much flour.
And that's what it's all based off of. That's where those measurements come from.
Yeah, it's a science.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I see it, I was actually at a friend's house baking with her, and I was like, "Oh, you gotta let me measure the flour. I'm like, can I show you something?"
Fully back for so long.
She's like, are you serious right now? Like, yeah, you're doing it all wrong. She's like, oh, she's like, I can't bake with you anymore.
But no, she learned something though, right?
Yeah, it's like all these things. Like before, I didn't know. That's how I would do it.
Yeah,
Scoop
right.
it up. What are you supposed to do? It's a measuring cup.
Yeah.
Well, it's not the same. Like a packaged flour is not the same as
Yeah.
sifted and fluff flour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Good
There are your
tips.
baking tips.
Good advice there.
If you could give our listeners and viewers just one, I'm sure you have a lot, but one piece of advice. You mentioned a lot how you did it, but taking that leap, starting your own business, or maybe somebody just started their own business and they're like, to your point, like, okay, now I'm in it. Like, now what? But I guess what's that one piece of advice you can just tell somebody listening who's just on the fence of, in the corporate life, I'm comfortable, but I know I want to do this.
I have a lot of them written down. Like I was thinking, like, what's the most important one, and I'm not sure.
Here's a couple.
Yeah, so I would say the fear thing sticks with me. Like, don't let fear control you. Like, don't settle for what you're currently doing because you're scared of the unknown. There's so many things. Like, if you think about, I mean, you're at a corporate job, but how secure is it? I mean, you've got all of these things, 401k that back it up, but if your happiness isn't there, like, is that worth something? Like, it took me a long time to get over that. And
Sure.
like, and even at that last second in the job, I was throwing a little bit more money, and I was still like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna go. Like, my happiness just isn't there.
Yeah.
And I needed that fuel. So I guess I would say, don't let the fear can scare you, but don't let it control you. Because you are the one who has to be in the driver's seat. You gotta make that decision. And once you do, it's like, no, there's no looking back. And that's kind of how I was. I thought about it and pondered it for too long, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But looking back now, I understand why I did what I did. I know why it's scary. I get that. You can only be so planful too. You can plan.
Yep.
But then when you do it, you are most likely there's going to be something that comes up that you're like, ooh, wasn't planning for that. But that's how it is. That it's like that in a corporate job too. Sometimes you get blindsided when you're in a meeting or something. It's the same thing. It's just there's more responsibility as an entrepreneur. But I think the highs are high and the lows are low. Like when you're high as an entrepreneur, it's like really good. And then there's times that there's some lows and you're like, oh, why am I doing this? Can I do this? But the next day you wake up, you're like, I'm doing this. And so like there's like that control factor.
Yeah.
So I feel like your destiny is yours and you have to decide to own it. So like I wouldn't sacrifice happiness.
You made a really good point with earlier about the fear side of it. Like, you can have fear in your current job, or you could have fear doing your own job, right? And
Yep.
it could be the same thing either way. It's just like, would you rather be doing it for someone else or for yourself?
Right, like
It's
that
gonna be
dream.
very
Are you
good.
building
Yeah.
your dream or someone else's dream?
Yeah.
Because you gotta decide. You can't do both.
Yeah.
You
Love
gotta pick.
Right.
And I was totally there. I was there. Is this my dream or their dream? Because I don't feel like this is my dream.
Yeah.
And so, you have to, at some point, you gotta make that decision. You gotta follow your heart, and like that saying, follow your gut. Is so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I had that, like, that time I made that call, I'm like, I'm doing it. This is
Yeah.
it. It was scary, but it was good. It's a good scary.
Yeah.
Great.
So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, learn more about Sugar on Top Sweet Shop, how would they do so?
So my website is sugarontopsweetshop.com, or my email is sugarontopsweetshop@outlook.com. On Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, not really, but kind of.
Yeah.
Mainly
Yeah.
Instagram, Facebook is where I do a lot of, and then through email.
Okay.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you coming. Or I guess us all meeting together.
Yes,
That's
this was,
great.
this was fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Very cool.